Haters Urban listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch.
And that's when I was like, what?
Girl, he just said that. He said that you were basically stalking him. Like, and made sure.
Oh yeah, he showed me screenshots about like friends saying that I was looking at his stories or something like that.
Do you not look at people's stories that you've been fucking? Because I do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. I want to know what you're doing
But
without me.
he was like, oh.
Right, okay. So I was wondering about that. I'm old, so I don't know how people use Instagram. People are telling Uche that other people are saying that Lydia's looking at their stories. And I thought, at first I was like, huh. But then I thought, well, wait, what's wrong with that? Like, couldn't Lydia see, oh, okay, Uche is friends with that person, or Uche just liked that thing. I wonder what that thing was. Maybe I'll like it too. I don't know. Or you're just maybe a little interested because you're wondering. It sounds like their relationship was a lot of on again, off again. And if you are really into someone, you might wonder, like, okay, where am I standing in this relationship? Oh, I just saw him browsing someone else's Instagram. I wonder if there's some evidence that, you might want to know, where do you stand? And maybe that would be an avenue to kind of figure it out. Anyway, I was just wondering, because I'm thinking, is that a bad thing? Is that bad etiquette on Instagram to browse Instagram?
I don't know. It's just so much.
Milton is mature enough to understand, like, don't listen, like, to shit he's saying, right? Look at them.
Now Milton and Uche are together?
I'm trying to be honest tonight, and she blows up at me. Last year, I started getting...
There's so many... I can't tell if Uche is distorted or is semi-purposely lying or spinning. He has... So when he says stuff like that, it throws everything into question. He just said, I was just trying to tell her the truth, and she blows up at me. That is not how anyone would characterize. Even people that like Uche would not characterize their conversation as Uche was merely just saying the truth. And for some totally weird reason, Lydia just completely blew up. Now, I've been wondering about his goal this whole time. Is his goal just to stir the pot? This has the hallmarks of shenanigans, right? That a producer put him up to this because they need some drama. But I don't know. Uche, from the beginning, has had this streak of this behavior. And I can't figure out what it is. It makes me wonder if he feels like if he feels very insecure and he is trying to get out ahead of something that he feels like he needs to. Maybe he feels humiliated by the whole situation, or humiliated by the fact that he didn't find someone, although he did have someone that wanted to be with him, but he turned her down. Or if he's worried that Lydia is going to spread rumors, or if he's jealous of Milton, if he wants to be with, I don't know. There's something at the core of this. I'm going to take a guess and say it's somewhere orbiting around insecurity of some sort of anxiety. And his solution is to go on this campaign, almost like a political campaign, like of a politician, where you calmly and in this very self-assured way, you just continue to bullet point and spin everything around, such that you are convincing you're trying to convince everyone in this calm way. And we don't normally see that on the show. Usually people are just screaming at each other. It's not usual that we see people calmly. Now, there's a direction we could go in terms of Machiavellianism, of pre-planning harm of other people. But I've also seen people who, they just have a way of coping with anxiety like this by seeming calm. I have friends like this, actually, that they come across like this, the way that he is right now, and it can be very frustrating if you're the target, very hurtful if you're the target. And it looks like they are cool as a cucumber. They're calmer than they are normally, but on the inside, they're actually freaking out and they're terrified. But they learned early that that doesn't work, or they have a mode where they know they can go into. We can imagine Uche feeling like very confident in this spinning mode, if you will, given his profession, or he already was like this. And people, it was very common for me to work with clients, teenagers and young adults who had things in this category. And a lot of people will say, you should be a lawyer. In the midst of an argument with a teacher in high school, the teacher would be like, oh, I'm really frustrated, but you might want to think about being a lawyer. And I would sort of chuckle every time I heard that, because if all those people became lawyers, like a third of Americans would be lawyers at this point. And so I just thought it wasn't the best advice if it was serious, because, there's a lot of paths in life, and it's certainly not the only career path that they could take. And there's a lot of jobs that require assertiveness and spin, right? Anyway, so I'm trying to figure out what his deal is, but it's starting to revolve around that for me, that he is scared. He is resorting to a mode that he knows to be effective for him. And I don't know if I showed the clip, but we heard Johnny say that she was kind of convinced by Uche. She said he's very convincing, because Johnny was asking Lydia about the accusation that Lydia followed him onto the show.
Messages from girls on Instagram saying, hey, I've been seeing her view my stories for weeks at a time. She doesn't follow me. You're the only person she follows. I thought I should let you know.
Okay, so that's a little bit more detail. So these people are saying, I follow you, Uche. She doesn't follow me, but she follows you. Well, no, they didn't say that, but anyway, they're presumably associates, right? And so they're saying, Lydia, this person doesn't follow me, but they're viewing my stories for weeks. Okay, we still just don't know. Now, I want to be clear that it's possible that Lydia was stalking. It might be hard to visualize because that's not something that's usually depicted in media, but women absolutely can stalk. It is very, very scary to be stalked in situations like that. And we're hearing Uche claim that, and I don't want to claim that his claims are wrong or victim blame in any way. It's possible he is a victim of it, but it's unclear because the way that Uche talks, it could be all spin, right? I don't actually doubt that someone did reach out to Uche. I would put money down that someone did reach out to Uche and say, there's this woman that is watching my stories. I still am having a hard time believing that Instagram actually gives people that statistic, but that data. But anyway, so let's say that that happened and Uche heard that and interpreted it in a certain way. So I think it's possible that that is true, but what's the meaning of Lydia looking at those stories is the thing. So I don't know. I've also been wondering if Uche, in the beginning, now I'm starting to wonder about him having trauma about being invaded, that he is displacing and recreating with Lydia, that when he was younger, he was betrayed in some way, that somehow someone was invading his space or his body or his life and chasing him in a controlling, domineering way, scary way, abusive way. Parents can be that way sometimes. You can also be bullied at school that way, stalked by a friend in school. So I wonder if he's imposing. But, it's also possible that he was legit abused that way by Lydia. It's also possible, I don't know if you've heard me talk about this before, but some people will say there's no such thing as mutual abuse. You might have heard me talk about this with Mildred, and I was talking about mutual abuse, and it is a myth that mutual abuse doesn't exist. A very brief summary is that I've worked in this field as a specialist in domestic violence, intimate partner violence. I would treat the perpetrators who were court mandated for a year of treatment to essentially deprogram them so that they, after graduating from the class, were far less likely to perpetrate again. And I studied a lot and learned a lot, and obviously I've treated a lot of victims of intimate partner violence throughout my career. And when we assess people who are court mandated or even just informally in my office, I'm trying to figure out who is the abuser and who's the victim. If I hear about violence maybe going both ways or verbal abuse maybe going both ways, then I am really wanting to know. Sometimes I need to know for court reasons, and sometimes I need to know for treatment reasons, or both. But I'm trying to figure out who that person is. And one of the things that will happen is that I will hear violence going both ways, but we will determine that one person is the abuser and the other person is the victim, and the victim sometimes will fight back, or they'll have moments where they lose control or something, but they are consistently the victim, and there's a consistent pattern of abuse from the other person. And what will happen is the abuser will often point out, no, I'm not the, it's mutual. We both hit each other. And they will highlight that as a way of trying to get out from being identified as the abuser. And sometimes they actually believe this to be true. It's a distortion, a semi-delusion that they have based on just the way our brains work regarding emotion, but also their own experiences, their own distortions, their own lens that they're seeing the world through their personality disorder. But anyway, so we'll hear about mutual abuse a lot when it's not actually mutual abuse. And what the lay public will sometimes, and some clinicians, I anecdotally will say this, will interpret that as saying that mutual abuse never exists. It's sort of like when women were coming forward during Me Too and before, they were often blamed, victim blamed, or discounted and said, you're just in it for the money, or you got too drunk, it's your fault, those kinds of things. But anyway, as a society, we started to wake up through Me Too and through a lot of brave women coming forward saying that, and we concluded as a society that we really need to start believing a lot of the accounts. We really should stop assuming that these people coming forward are lying or in it just for the money, primarily because there is such a backlash to coming forward that most people don't come forward. So if people are coming forward, then it is very likely that it actually happened. It doesn't mean it absolutely happened, of course, because there are false allegations at times. But anyway, what some people did is they took that black and white, unnuanced conclusion, and they said, believe all allegations. And they would say, if anyone comes forward with an allegation, you have to believe them, or you're a misogynist, or you are someone who doesn't support victims or something. And that is absurd, because there are some people who come forward with false allegations. It's a very, very small percentage. It's hard to gauge because it depends on what we're talking about. Are we talking about like allegations to the police? Because the data about that can be gathered and there can be percentages. But, there's a lot of allegations that don't actually involve the police, right? Anyway, so with mutual abuse, it was a similar thing. We were like, hey, a lot of claims of mutual abuse are just ways of putting up a smokescreen for unidirectional intimate partner violence. And some people said, then mutual abuse doesn't exist, but it still exists. We, as clinicians, understand that not only are there some allegations of sexual abuse that are false, it's rare, but it happens, and also with claims of mutual abuse, sometimes it is actually, it's not a factual thing. There's not like a numerical demarcation between unidirectional intimate partner violence and mutual abuse. But for us clinicians, we have to assess these situations. It's important for us to know, and among experts, it is understood, and it's in the research literature that mutual abuse does exist. Now, it depends on the definition, because for some people, mutual abuse means that violence is going both ways. But what experts will say, including myself, is that, sure, there might be violence going both ways, but you really have to understand who is being victimized. Is there a pattern of control and coercion and gaslighting and beating someone down and putting someone down and keeping them under someone's thumb? And might there be violence going? People tend to look at violence as an indication of intimate partner violence or of a pattern. But, for example, I've never heard of this, or I can't think of one off the top of my head, but theoretically, you could have a situation where the abuser is never violent and the victim is occasionally violent. So when you look at the couple, you would hear from one person, yes, I'm the violent one and my partner has never been violent with me. But you hear about a lot of toxicity, then it would be tempting to believe that the violent person is the abuser. But you can have a lot of abuse that doesn't involve violence. In fact, when you really look at ongoing abusive relationships, the violence can be a major part of it for sure. But in my experience, on average, most abusive relationships, I would say 80% of the abusive behaviors don't involve violence at all. They might involve threats of violence, but usually it's anger, intimidation, putting someone down. Basically, either the abuser goes on a campaign or the relationship just essentially creates a situation where the victim just believes that they're nothing, that they deserve to be hit or put down or controlled, and that sort of thing. Because it's all just an effort to overall control and keep the victim close and under control. Anyway, so with mutual abuse, it sometimes is a conceptualization that experts will land on. So that brings me back to Uche and Lydia, and it's possible that with the two of them, there was mutual abuse or mistreatment or toxicity or something else, where Uche was being his way, putting her down, stringing her along, criticizing her, cheating on her, and not caring about her, showing that he doesn't care, maybe lying to her at times, telling her that I'm not dating anyone else, but saying it in a way that he believes is telling the truth when he's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's no way for me to know. I'm just making stuff up. There's a possibility that happened, and there's a possibility that she was also occasionally stalking him. You know, you can have both of those things happening. We don't have to choose, at least clinicians, we don't have to say, well, which one is worse? And, you know, who's the victim and who's the abuser? Sometimes it is going both ways. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.